Right, hey everyone. Hope everyone enjoyed lunch. Obviously, you three just arrived, so you guys missed the first couple presentations, but hard task to follow. They all did really well. So obviously, most of you guys probably know me already. Will, my topic this year is increasing recycling at the University of Otago. Something I haven't really had much involvement with before. I'm actually studying law, so it's quite a challenge to think in a quite different way and engage it in a very different kind of situation than I'm normally used to. So to give a bit more context, the university has a strategic plan called Vision 2040, and part of that is Net Zero 2040, which you guys are probably familiar with. So net zero emissions by 2040, right? And a big part of that is obviously reducing waste, cancelling emissions, so that anything we do emit, we are offsetting with our recycling and through our general waste and stuff. So one of the aims of this presentation and under the scholarship as a whole, I kind of identified two key things from the start, because obviously increasing recycling is a very big challenge and it's not going to be that simple to simply just increase it overnight. So some smaller things to change and improve over time. Remember, it's not going to be a 1 year is going to change the whole world, but slow incremental improvements. And to those areas, the aims that I found is firstly, decreasing contamination rate of recycling in shared spaces. So from the start, I knew that one of the big things to change was the contamination rate. Because in the bins on campus and in the halls as well, if it's contaminated by, like, let's say pour some milk or something in it, and the whole bin's wasted and it all has to go to landfill. So if you can make a small difference in the contamination rate, it can actually have quite a big impact overall. So that was kind of the first aim for the shared spaces. Secondly, focusing on the residential halls. It's got a massive opportunity with all the first year students mostly in one place to make a real difference in how they're thinking, the education that they have. So hopefully when they go into flatting and stuff in the years prior, they know how to recycle better, have better habits, and really much more involved in what they're doing, really. So I wasn't quite sure about what the biggest issues facing them were. So talking to the college staff to find those big issues was one of the big things I wanted to do as well. So the current recycling practices, you can see in this graph, it's the waste and the link over the last 3 years. And a few interesting things about it. So the big orange part there is the total amount of waste, so the stuff going to landfill. That little green bit on top is the actual recycling. So from the graph, you can see over the previous years, it has gone up, the amount of waste, but hopefully you can see that recycling has also gone up a bit. So it's remembering it's not just total waste that's goal, but the diversion rate. The diversion rate is the total amount, and then what's that percentage recycling. So if you're diverting half of it, then half that orange part will be green as well, which is what we're trying to aim to do, increasing the diversion rate, not just reducing total waste for this part of the investigation. The methods that I used to kind of gather my data, firstly, I interviewed key stakeholders. There was about 5 of them, but they all had really good information. The interviews were like 20 to 60 minutes long. They all had a lot of stuff to say about what was going on in the halls, waste management stuff as well. So left a lot of scope to kind of talk about what they wanted to talk about and do everything. Secondly, went to the link and talked to 20 students. Not very many students, but I think it was very helpful because they all said very similar things. So they all said, yeah, like they cared about recycling, they want to be better, but they all have similar things they're struggling with. I asked them, yeah, like what are their attitudes towards recycling? What are some things that are like, what are they struggling with right now? I'll get to that a bit later, but it was all quite similar stuff. And they said, lastly, some data from Waste Management New Zealand. It's kind of hard to quantify what you're trying to change if you don't have the data behind it and see how it's evolved over time. So using that as a way to measure how we're improving and doing better is another thing that I want to do as well. So the results. So these are results from the interviews, what they're kind of saying to me about what they want to be changed. And the first thing that was quite theme throughout the whole thing, like that everyone's been trying to say it, is the tracking of the waste. So currently the halls don't receive the data from Waste Management New Zealand about how much they're wasting and recycling and their food waste and stuff. So it's kind of hard for them to test some of the initiatives that they are doing and see if it's actually working. So if they can get that data and move on with that, this might be a bit more successful with what they're already doing. Secondly, the food waste side of it. This was something that all brought up and all cared a lot about. It's quite a significant part of the hall waste. This is specifically halls, not for the shared spaces. A significant part of it is that food waste. And how it works is that if the students put on their plate, it can't really be recycled because it's been contaminated. People put random things in it. So, but the actual kitchen food waste, so stuff that isn't eaten, can be reused. There's things called like composters from Waste Management New Zealand, which is a quite big thing to like actually change the food waste. So the key thing is, yeah, getting students to take less food and not waste what they are taking. So eat all of it and not waste the rest of it is another thing they can do to improve that food waste side of it. Third one is the student staff perspectives. So as I said, the student perspectives were all quite similar. They all cared a lot about recycling and doing better and really taking care of it. They all said similar things about they didn't have enough information about education. So I know for me personally as well, some things I'm just not quite sure if it's recycling or waste. So it probably is wasted when it probably could be recycled, or vice versa. It could be something I think can be recycled, but turns out not to be actually recycled as well. And on the staff side of the staff perspectives, this is specifically for the halls. They found that some people care a lot about the recycling in the halls, but then at the same time, a lot of people don't really. Like, obviously, first year, people are going to care a lot more about having a good time, studying hard, rather than recycling, which is clearly like just being realistic. Like, not everyone's going to care a lot about it. So understanding that and working with that to try to make a difference as well. Another thing the staff are doing really well in the halls, again specifically, they've got to think of the sustainability review panel. Just as an example of something they've done, along the bottom they have all the different initiatives that people are trying out. So, for example, I know one of the halls has like a trapping program where like spend a lot of time catching animals that are like vermin and stuff, but they also do like a really good food waste program. So you can see the colleges, you can see what they're doing. The green one means they're already doing it. Orange thing means there's opportunities for them to do it. And red means it's not really viable to do it. So you can see a lot of orange, there's a lot of opportunities for things to improve in colleges. So using that, not just creating new systems, but using what they're already doing, working with that to try to make a difference as well. Last thing are the results, the contamination. So going into it, I knew this was a big thing as well. So especially in the link, the contamination in the link is often done by coffee cups brought in from external places like the dispenser and stuff. So the thing with these things is, firstly, they've still got coffee in them when they're being thrown out. So it goes into recycling and means it has to all go to landfill. Secondly, they're often misleadingly led as recyclable. Now, they're not really in New Zealand, like in the context of Dunedin. They can be recycled in very specific circumstances in like commercial settings, but especially as coffee in them, they're not actually recyclable. So they go in there and they can't be broken down and compost and stuff. So it actually just ruins the whole thing. So that's another case where education about that kind of stuff would be a big difference maker. Onto the things they're saying could be improved right now. So they've kind of said what the issues, now they're going into what actually needs to be improved, what could be improved. So firstly, providing the waste data to the halls. We have the data, it exists. Providing that data to them is another big thing, so they can see where the initiatives are working, see what areas need some improvement that they previously might not have known about. I've got an example college here, so you can see, again, the yellow is like general waste, the top little bit is recycling, and the little red bit, just last year, it's been the food waste. You can see here, like the seasonally, obviously the students come in, they create a lot of waste, that's where the big spikes are. But you can see over the last 2 years, they've actually significantly decreased waste. And with this data, they can kind of see that and really know how to fix it. Also, they started tracking food waste, which is another thing where they can kind of focus on that a bit more rather than waste as a whole big thing to look at. So that was the first thing they really wanted to work on. Secondly, improving the signage in education. So signage is like the posters and stuff around campus. If there's no posters, it's kind of hard to say, like, what do you need to do? Why would I do this kind of stuff? That kind of works into what Petra was saying. There'd be like sharp and strong, there'd be like motivation, lots of stuff like that. Second is education. Education again was like every college brought that up as a big thing. Even the students, like they didn't have enough knowledge about the educase recycling, and the hall people didn't think there was enough education about recycling and what needs to go in the halls to change. So the second thing I thought was signage and education. The sustainability review panel that I just talked about, one of the big things they found was that the biggest difference they could make was education. Obviously, you can't force first year students to like really hard, like have to recycle or you're going to get punished or something, because they're going to leave and they're not going to do it anymore, right? So if you can educate them, make them want to do it themselves, then actually, hopefully that transfers into flattening again, rather than they do it for you and then it's, oh, screw that, don't want to do that anymore, they stop. So that was the second thing. Thirdly, increasing student involvement. So a lot of the stuff that's happening right now with, for example, the sustainability review panel, is kind of the people within the halls, the staff are doing it themselves. So if you can get student involvement, get them behind it and actually leading the change, I suspect there'll be a much more effective way of changing it, get them wanting to change stuff rather than simply being told what to do and kind of like you have to do it or else. But if you can do things like get student representatives to like speak for the students as a whole and kind of get their perspective more than just what the staff are seeing, because as we saw with the interviews, students think that they care a lot about it, and some staff people thought some didn't. So we had difference in what the students and staff are thinking. So bridging that gap with student involvement, running events and stuff is another thing. Now, the next slide is about kind of my model. So I've looked at all the results and I've thought of 3 key things that need to change that I think the biggest areas like improve. So here they are, easy as pie: participation, information, education. It's not just a whole new thing, it's kind of working off what a lot of the halls and the universities are already doing, instead of just creating a whole new thing. So it's much easier to, much smaller step, less resource intense to kind of get this whole thing going. So firstly, with the participation, that's kind of focused on firstly, the halls participating and really engaging with the sustainability review panel, like expanding on that, making sure they're really paying attention. Collaborating is another part of it. So collaborating, sharing the best ideas, maybe even getting experts in to talk about what needs to change. Part of that also, the student side of it is really getting the students involved with it. So for example, I'm going to talk about recommendations next, but kind of getting the students involved with that stuff rather than just being on the receiving end of what's going on. Secondly, the information education, kind of similar. So the different distinction I'm making here is information is kind of the stuff Waste Management New Zealand is giving them. So the data from the halls about breaking it down, like what they're doing. So the more like analytical, objective side of the information side of it. So it's pretty much all of that is just giving them the data that already exists and making that more accessible. Finally, education. Education, I think, is the most important one, like actually teaching the students what it is and how to do it, when, kind of stuff. So for the education, it's all about, like getting them involved, posters, telling them to take less food when they need, if they don't need it and stuff. So I think education, especially is the biggest area for change, I reckon. So from this, I'm not the actual person implementing this. So I've got a series of recommendations for the Te Kia Ora employee, the worker, Friday, who's here to kind of do this. So obviously just having a whole bunch of, like increased participation is like not very specific on what you need to do. So I thought having kind of 4 things to kind of start with, not having to worry about it too much is kind of the good start. So firstly, standardizing and distributing posters. So lots of people said more posters, similar posters. With it, if you can standardize it, it's much easier to get the message across, because I know I'm just walking past it and you've got like a split second of like, they'll pay attention to it and then you're done, okay? So if it's like massive wall of text, not much information, like a lot of information, it's not going to go across, because to be quick, brief, get the point you want to do, don't throw your coffee cup in the air, put it in the bin, and then they're going to be done, move on, okay? And if you can make that similar between calls, between everything, the message will really get across. And then specifically calls as well for the posters, like the food waste ones, take less food, really think about what you're doing as well. Secondly, the formatting and sharing waste management data. So we have the data now. That's kind of quite easy steps. So just making graphs, making it readable, making it quite accessible to share to them. And they can kind of get that hall-led approach. So it's not a blanket approach for every hall. It's making it, every hall is different. Let's work with what you already have, what you're already doing. So especially that one is making it not competitive. In the past, the data has been shared, but it was during COVID, and actually that was found is that obviously halls had to use disposable stuff, so waste was really high. They felt like they're all being kind of not shamed, but like what they didn't feel like they're doing very well, so they kind of complained about it and it ended up stopping. So getting that going again, making sure it's not competitive, but just helpful to see how the initiative's going, making it work for them. Thirdly, running that cycle of recycling events. There's a person inside waste management that wants to run these events, so there is already a person that's keen for it. So making sure that's happening, getting student involvement, talk to Petra about student engagement, and then making sure that's working really well. Finally, encouraging halls to really engage with the review panel. So making sure that they actually want to do it, that really share ideas, that care about it, and not just being there. Because in the past, there's been years where it's like there's been less, like the people have cared less about it than in current years, really. I thought another good idea for that would be getting a student representative from each hall in there as well. So not just saying here are the people in the college doing it, but getting that student perspective and really working with students to make it more successful. And that was kind of my recommendations. So thanks. Questions and stuff.
Want to keep an eye on the screen in case somebody puts
an
online one in the chat.
Oh yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
I have a question. In terms of the colleges, did you say that the data was creating a competitive, like shaming aspect to the colleges in terms of recycling?
Yeah, because it was just in the middle of lockdown, they had to do this stuff. They didn't really have any opportunities to like be more efficient and like recyclable. So they found that they were giving this data, they like didn't quite know what to do with it. And this kind of got the data and it's like, what do we do with it? So maybe give them more like direction, like some list of things that they're doing well.
Do you
instead of
have
just
any ideas
data.
around like what that could look like in terms, because I feel like a lot of the colleges like to say that the only motivation that they have is competing against one another. About trying to make, like, I guess in terms of the corridors that you've had across the summer with people, have there been any like sparks or indications that you think that might motivate people outside of it being a competition?
Yes, I think it's, I mean, I quite like things being a little bit competitive. Obviously, there's like a good edge to competition to the bad edge. So maybe the bad edge in the past was just giving it to them and like seeing what everyone's doing without any context
Yeah.
to the differences. So obviously, bigger halls, like so Uni Hall, for example, is like massive. They can't really compare the direct numbers to a smaller hall like Tiro, the little flat ones and stuff. So maybe being a little bit competitive about some aspects, but at the same time, really think about it is collaborative at the end of the day. It's not like, yeah, they're all part of the same team.
They're more solutions focused.
Yeah, like being positive, stuff like that. Question, any other question?
In your interviews, so you talked a lot about kind of the user side about like educating the people who've got the waste in their hands and need to know where to put it. Did any of the sort of interventions sort of further up the chain come up in your interviews, like food waste, changing the service? So at the moment, like I think the kitchen staff will serve the protein, but all the veggies are sort of self-serve. Did those themes come up as well, like ways to reduce a form of waste by saying, will the staff will serve the food, or we'll have no plastic on campus, or all those kinds of things?
It didn't come out too much. They didn't really talk specifically about specific types of food waste, kind of more just broadly, because obviously there's like university has already decided on some things like how much food has to be cooked. So for example, with like meat-free Mondays, like recent years, they knew that students were leaving to get other food, and they knew that there'd be lots of leftover waste food, but they couldn't make less because they had to make this food because they needed to be able to feed everyone. So now they're scrapped meat-free Mondays. So that's kind of an example of something that can reduce waste like that. Does that kind of answer your question? I'm not 100% sure on that. Anything else, Brooke?
I know you talked a little bit about like, sometimes not everyone's going to care about that sort of the recycling thing. How do you think you can implement recycling so that even if people don't care?
So I think that comes back to the standardizing the posters. So even if you don't care, like you're probably going to get, when you're putting stuff in the bin, you're going to have a split second to like look at that poster, and then maybe you can over time, over a couple of months, learn that lesson, start to do it. So even if you don't really care, like you'll know how to do it and you have that knowledge. Even if it's just saying, I don't care, but I know I don't want my coffee cup in the bin, so I'll put it in the waste instead. Side of it.
Have you seen anyone who's done posters really well?
There's been a couple of good posters in the link already. So, but this is some like 1 or 2 bins, which is obviously not going to be very effective when like most of the bins you're going to use aren't going to have posters and stuff. So kind of getting those nice posters and then spreading them out more.
Did anyone say that they liked particularly parts of posters or like disliked parts of the posters, or like parts were more effective than other parts?
I didn't get heaps of information on that, to be fair. I talked to the waste management person that does manage some of the posters and stuff, and she said, yeah, make it brief, make it succinct, make it kind of colourful. She didn't really tell me exactly what that looked like, to be honest, but there are plenty of people, so I can give you the context later if you want to talk to those people that do care about that and are involved with making posters and stuff. I didn't really talk to anyone directly about that.
Because you said that the external coffee cups were such a major issue, and like, did you talk to the dispensary at all about it and like have a conversation with them, or did you kind of just gather that they were?
I didn't talk to them directly, but because the people in the link and stuff can see the bin, the waste, because obviously it's not taken, it's going to be thrown in the landfill. They can kind of see the cups that are coming through. I didn't talk to them directly, but did talk to like the waste management people that did say that that's a major thing, not just specifically dispensary, but any kind of offsite coffee places. That was just an example. But yeah, maybe that would be a step talk to them.
You send the boys round to see them.
Yeah. I know that on campus, they don't do the disposable coffee cups anymore, which I think that's, 2019 they stopped doing it, and then that was like a big drop in the contamination rate then because the actual university stopped doing that themselves. So maybe talk to them about that. I don't know if you could force them to change, but I don't know. Friday.
Oh, did you like find any particular things in the halls that were really contaminating? Like kind of.
Oh yeah, I was
similar
going
to
to
the
mention that. Sorry, I kind of forgot about that. Yeah, one of the things they said there's a lot of different things. Oh yeah, that too. Because sorry,
No,
but one of the things was milk bottles with milk still in it. So washing that up first. That was something. One of them said people keep throwing up in the bath in the recycling bins. So it's like not really recycle that stuff. So it's like yeah, it's maybe yeah. I think a lot of it came from like drinking in the halls. So when people are drinking, they care a lot less about putting stuff in the correct bin and more just like putting it there. I think another thing was, sorry.
I'm sorry, do colleges have glass bins as well?
Yeah, this year the glass bins, so see if that makes a difference. But I think another thing was when bins get full, like the normal bins get full, people like aren't going to hold on to their waste, so let's put it in the recycling bin so they don't have to hold on to it really. So making sure bins are big enough for all the waste and getting student involvement through like students take the bins, I know it's done,
yeah.
students had to take the bins out and stuff, so stuff like that. Yeah, but that was the main thing they brought up, like the bottles and the pizza boxes as well. They talked about that, but yeah, that's what I heard. Other questions? Anything else? No. Go on there.
Did you look at all into the amount of infrastructure that there is for the recycling in terms of that could be the halls or on campus here? Was that part of what you looked at?
So yeah, one of the things that came up with infrastructure is quite an interesting one actually. Dunedin has quite bad infrastructure compared to other places. So again, the waste management people said places like Auckland and Christchurch have much better like infrastructure, so they can actually do a bit more with it. So that's kind of a drawback of Dunedin at the moment. There's not so much stuff they can do with it. So one of the things hopefully changes in the future is kind of do more stuff with it. For example, there's a thing called the composter that the university worked with waste management on that takes all the, so that's where the food waste from the kitchens goes. So a bunch of that goes into that and that can be reused and put into like garden beds and stuff, whereas the plate waste can't because it can't be put through that machine and stuff. So that's kind of an example of something that can be done. Another question?
Good job.
All right. Sweet. Ooh, that's a bit long.
Thanks.
Next up, we have.
I might sit here. That's good.
Yeah.
What is this blue thing? Anything important?
No, that's just the microphone.
Oh, okay. I'll be real loud.
I think,
Clear to it. I'm really hard by your voice.
Yeah.
I'll go here.
You want to go back on it, so that's cool.
it's not on that screen.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Right. No worries. Yeah, let me know if you want to do any more stuff about it.
Yeah.
No worries.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Oh. Okay. Okay, so I'm Rata, as you all know. First, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to do this research and to be involved, and I really enjoyed getting to know everyone. my question is how to increase student engagement with the sustainability neighbourhood gardens. And the students referred to in the question are the residents that are selected to be part of the neighbourhoods. So we're going to go through the current study and its aims and structure, and then the main focus of the presentation will be on the themes that I've identified from my interviews. And then I'll touch on the plan I've created and the limitations of the research. So the main aims were to formulate a plan for the lead, and then more specifically to identify the barriers and solutions. To do so, I conducted interviews. I had two groups, 5 students who have previously lived in the sustainability neighbourhood, and then 5 people with experience relevant to garden engagement. So that includes people with knowledge around behaviour change, and then also people who have experience engaging communities with their gardens. The main insight I planned on getting from the students was the experience of living in the sustainability neighbourhood. And then from the second group, which was the experts, is hearing about the engagement solutions of other gardens and seeing if the barriers identified by my group 1 would be able to be overcome in similar ways that experts have overcome them. So I conducted a thematic analysis of my interviews, and because my research needed to come to practical recommendations, my thematic analysis was concept driven. So I went through planning on pulling out barriers and solutions. So I've got a selection of barrier themes and a selection of solution themes. So the first barrier theme is uncertainty, and it captures the lack of confidence expressed by students in engaging with the sustainability neighbourhood gardens. They emphasise that the lack of guidance made them feel unsure about how to participate effectively. Student 4 said that they wanted to engage more, but they just didn't quite know how to, and that was reiterated by other students. Another student said that having previous garden experience felt irrelevant because they're in a new country, so they didn't really know how to apply that skill. And this theme highlights that students' lack of engagement is not due to disinterest, but rather a gap in accessible information and support. Within this overall barrier of uncertainty, there's also a barrier of ownership, which is about the confusion that was expressed around whether they see it as their space to contribute to and benefit from. Students thought that some people didn't know that they were part of the neighbourhood, and if they knew that they were part of the neighbourhood, they didn't know if the garden was theirs. And if they did know that the garden was theirs, they didn't know what part of the garden that was. So it was kind of a 3-layer ownership thing. And then also with an uncertainty was practical gardening knowledge. So that was wide range, and it covered plant identification and growing procedures, harvesting practices. The second barrier was foresight. And there was quite a few examples given by students that could have been avoided if they'd had the time and like the time to come up with a plan. So like broad beans were grown, but turned out no one ate broad beans. And then lots of beds were planted one year, but the work required to maintain them meant that it took time that they didn't have. So just having the foresight to know that assignments were going to come. And then at one point, broccoli was grown outside, but that meant that they couldn't plant the tomatoes that they want. Oh, sorry, broccoli, which can grow outside, was planted in the tunnel house, which meant that tomatoes couldn't be grown. And then also garden bees were frequently in the afternoon during class time. So this thing emphasises the need for a well-thought plan to be put in place before the gardens are planted. A third barrier was lack of communication. While communication issues are present in all of the themes, this one specifically focuses on how misunderstandings or lack of information directly impacted students' engagement with the gardens. So some students didn't get big introduction emails, or at least they didn't see them because they were sent to emails that weren't related, that they weren't checking yet because they're international students. And there were also some situations where someone would plant something And then no one knew that there was like potatoes under the ground. And so they'd go and disrupt it when they're intending to engage, but the communication just wasn't quite there. The last barrier theme is about etiquette, and it centres around the challenges and frustrations of navigating shared responsibilities and expectations of the gardens. So they acknowledged that the gardens are communal, but they also expressed frustration at others benefiting from the garden without contributing. And then they wanted to harvest, but they wanted to take enough that it wouldn't go to waste, and then also not take too much that it's like unfair for others. So that was something that they really struggled with. And reduced engagement, because on the one hand, people were disheartened by it being unfair, like they've done work, and then other people take the product of their work, and then at the same time, they don't want to engage unfairly, so they kind of just don't engage at all. So those are all my barrier themes, and this is what it kind of comes to looking like at this point. The basic infrastructure is in place and the students are willing to engage. It's just that these things that can, like, they're in the process of being overcome. They're not completely not there. It's just that they haven't quite fully loaded. And hopefully with like a plan in place, they'll be changed to ticks. So then we're going to go to our solution themes. The first one is organised connection. And the students really emphasise that the level of engagement in their shared garden is closely tied to the strength of social connections in and between flats. They love all like organised things that they can come to that are in their space, like communal meals and scheduled gardening days and social activities, because it said that it like increases their motivation and then they have a sense of belonging. They also expressed that fostering connections with experienced gardeners, both inside and outside their neighbourhood, was a great way to learn. And there was also just the note that this had to be limited in a way because it is a private space. So outside connection is valuable, but it has to be controlled. The second theme was visual messaging. So this had two sub-themes. It was just people constantly said that visual signage was an effective way of conveying information. So this was around practical gardening knowledge, such as labels for plant identification and the benefits. Then it was also suggested that visual messaging through photos and posters would be an effective way of establishing a neighbourhood sense of identity, and following from that, a group belonging and behaviour change in line with the values of the group, because they feel that they belong to this cohesive kind of group. Third theme is buy-in. Lots of the experts and the students also thought that just starting right at the beginning would result in further, like, more participation later on. They thought that once they started associating it with it being an uncertain and confusing space for them, that's kind of just what they associated with the gardens, and so it just was left in that state. And the experts noted that when students publicly state their intention to engage with the garden, they're more likely to follow through, as not doing so would create cognitive dissonance. So getting them at the start to say that they want to confirm that they're willing to be part of the neighbourhood, they've been selected, and now that they're here, continue that kind of passion that they have at that stage and turn it into something that they've actually agreed to. Then there's ease, and so it's just making it pretty self-explanatory, easy. It needs to be, the work required of them has to be worthwhile in terms of what they get out of it, and making sure that it's consistent, so things don't get too hard to like look at and just be like, I don't even know what to do here. And that was suggested to be done in like small bite-sized ways. Okay, so in order to, these things on the left are the barriers that were identified, and then the orange boxes are the solution themes. So I've created a plan that addresses the barriers and is based around the themes of what experts and students said would work. And we're hoping that that will lead to an increase in student engagement. So the plan has 3 stages. These are them. I won't go through them all individually, but we've got an introduction phase, a planting phase, and then a follow-through phase. I'll just give an example of one way the plan addresses the barriers while taking into consideration the themes of solutions. So within the barrier of uncertainty at the start, there was the sub-theme of ownership. And the first step in the plan is to make and put up identity and garden-related signage in the neighbourhood flats. So something like this, which is based on the solution theme of visual messaging, and would hopefully target the sub-theme of ownership. And then there was also in that same theme of uncertainty, the sub-theme of practical knowledge. And in stage 2 of the plan, down the bottom, I recommend to make a durable plant. Make durable plant identification tags that link to a photo of the plant, information on plant care, and how and when to harvest, as well as recipes. And so that might look something like this. And that QR code is attached to recipes and stuff for cos lettuce. And that is everything. Any questions?
Just looking at when you talk about your sort of buy-in solution,
Yes.
I'm wondering if it would be like the idea of almost being like a social contract of sorts, getting everyone together and the neighbourhood to kind of discuss like what responsibilities are going to do and almost having a project signed. Do you think it would be like deterring, or do you think it would genuinely be helpful?
I put in the plan that a verbal kind of buy-in situation. So I've got like, I've recommended that they have a meeting really early on and they discuss how much maintenance they're willing to do, like how much time they're going to put aside, and they kind of from that plan what they're going to plant in the garden. And then I've recommended that they talk to Janice, or if she's not available, someone else with garden expertise who can tell them how much maintenance and work that plant is going to require. And so, the plan is all going to be tailored to what they want in the first place. And so then the fact that they've just met these people and they're all talking together really early on, I feel like that would kind of have a similar effect as like a contract, but less intimidating. It's like they've verbally said it, they've agreed to it publicly. And I think that will hopefully create enough of a cognitive dissonance if they don't follow through. Anything else?
I'm so excited to meet with Maddie because I think this is really going to excite us this month. He's like really, really, really good.
Oh yeah, that's good.
One thing that I just want to know, and we've probably captured it within some of the other stuff that you've parts, but did you notice that, I mean, I think we always assume that students that are selecting to be part of the sustainability neighbourhood come with all the skills and knowledge required to be in the sustainability neighbourhood. Yes. That maybe barriers were arising because of lack of knowledge or information around gardening to begin with. Yeah. And so like in terms of your plan, is that kind of captured in terms of like skill building and education?
Definitely. And also skill building and education while also keeping in mind like the solution themes of connection. So it's like done in ways that it's with outside people, but also with their flat and the other flats. So it's a social event, but they're getting like, and still with the knowledge. They said that in years that they did have a lot more engagement, they were learning from each other at the same time. Like they still didn't have a whole heap of knowledge, but it was just that there was other people there who like they would then call their parents who had a garden at home or like, and like they knew all that practical type stuff. So it's like, if they're all there, they can also figure it out.
And like the playfulness of trial and error. Right?
Exactly. Like, and they do want to be in there and they do want to engage. So it's kind of getting it started and then they can really take it from there as long as there's a group of them to do it.
Quite different here in the messaging coming back from those who were domestic students in there for a year and internationals who are there mostly for one semester. It's a really different approach that we need to do. Yeah,
I think I didn't put it on in the presentation, but in my report, it's a big thing and that I didn't know how to like solve. It's like future recommendations that there needs to be some way of maintaining the garden between semesters and like a continuance of. I mean, one student was telling me that it's not good to like keep planting the same thing in the same place, so like having a diary of that sort, but yeah, like a lot more long-term thing, whereas this is focused on just students who want to engage and students that are there for one semester. So I think that's definitely something that can be looked into more.
And do you think there'd be issues, given some of that feedback that you got, around getting sustainably neighbourhood residents invested in maintaining those gardens, but opening those gardens up to like other students to harvest?
Yes, I think because that's something that stands out as like in lots of gardens, collaborating with other people and getting more energy from other organisations or other just groups of people and is such a good strategy for increasing engagement. But that is just to a point not an option with these ones because they already, it is their home.
Yeah.
And they don't want other people in there to an extent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pointed towards that. Never make a cameraman.
Okay, good day everyone, my name is Ella, as you know. So my project is called Reaching for the Stars, how does University of Otago's food system compare to food making standards? So it's called Reaching for the Stars because the food making standard can award businesses up to 3 stars. So a bit of background, food systems have a big impact on the health of humans and the environment. And agriculture, it pollutes air, water, and soils. And the University of Otago has food purchases at the 3rd highest carbon emitter. And also in New Zealand, we're very like, our average diet is very land hungry. With if everybody in the world ate how New Zealanders eat on average, we require 2 planets to sustain us. Because we eat a lot of meat, not many like fruit and vegetables. So a bit about the Food Made Good Standard. It is created by the Sustainable Restaurant Association, and it is the only global sustainability certification for the food service industry. It is holistic and covers sourcing, society, and the environment, specifically focusing on these key areas within the 3 main areas. So for this presentation, I'll go through each like sub area, like celebrate provenance, and outline the food making suggestions for University of Otago specifically, the things we still have to do from this we can make. So, drum roll, this is how we are going. This is my estimation. So for this project, I evaluated the university's food system against the Food Made Good standard and have estimated that our overall score is around 71%. So although this score is quite high, it's still important that we continue to make progress, and there's still a lot of areas for improvement, specifically the animal, plant, speed of meat, and sourcing seafood sustainably. So the first category, celebrating provenance. The food maker suggestions is to implement operational policy to favour seasonal, local and heritage ingredients, written commitment from suppliers to meet sustainable procurement standards for the locality. These are our top 5 ingredients, with milk, potatoes and chicken, all originating in New Zealand, bananas coming from Ecuador and the Philippines, and canola oil from Malaysia. So there are benefits to sourcing locally, such as increasing modularity of food systems, as well as increasing food security and also decreasing vulnerability to international disturbances. However, local food does not equal sustainable food, and the environmental footprint of food depends more on the land usage, production efficiency, and the food type as well, with this graph showing beef, lamb, cheese, and beef dairy producing way more than any other type of food, and the transport being a very small part of the emissions. Sourcing local meat is also more difficult and complicated than sourcing local plants, as although cattle may be born and raised in New Zealand, it doesn't guarantee that the plants used to feed it are. So New Zealand is actually the world's biggest importer of palm kernel expeller, which, as you all know, is like from Malaysia, where they are currently a lot of deforestation going on. And also, although our milk is local, it's the New Zealand dairy farming industry is not good for the environment and polluting our waterways and marine ecosystems. Supporting farms and fishers. Food maker suggestions is risk assessment of high-risk products. So that includes foods such as chocolate, tea, coffee, bananas, chilies, beef. Use suppliers with direct trade relationships. Work with suppliers who pay their workers a living wage and farmers they source from a living income. Participate in initiatives and campaigns to promote awareness and action. This is really important because if farmers are in poverty, they're unable to invest in infrastructure that will increase productivity, and also have low energy, also decreasing productivity. More plants, better meat. So the main suggestion for this category is to increase vegan, vegetarian and plant-rich meals and decreasing meat served, and increasing the menu options of plant-rich meals. There's also serving of wild game meat, buying meat products that are organic or certified to the highest standards of animal welfare, environmental management, as well as organic fruit and vegetables. So challenges with serving or sourcing more plants, better meat is financial pressures, because the university, they have quite tight margins. So they're often just looking for what is the cheapest option, and often the organic and products that are environmentally certified are not the cheapest. And we also have to feed students what they want. So 75% of the most popular meals in last year from the halls were featuring meat. So the students, there's quite high demand for meat. But this could also be because of some of the halls have inflexible dietary options, where if you're vegetarian, you're not actually allowed to take the, if you're not vegetarian, you're not allowed to take the vegetarian option. So it's just enabling a flexitarian approach to meals. There are also different standards for culling and processing of wild game meat. So sourcing wild game meat is not something procurement is open to doing at the moment. And solutions is change might have to start with the diners. So that includes educating them on why we should eat more plants and less meat. As well as, because there's a bit of a negative attitude towards getting rid of the meat and serving more plants, with like people saying things such as mindless Monday instead of mindful Monday. It is suggested that we serve smaller portions of meat or incorporate more vegetables, kind of without advertising this to the students. So sort of tricking them into eating more vegetables and less meat. Sourcing sustainable seafood.
So increasing the volume of seafood we serve, certified sustainability standards, diversifying the seafood on menus, not buying trawler boat caught fish. So the main fish purchased by the university is poke, and we also purchased some orange robbie in 2023. And these are both caught through bottom trawling. And so to align with this suggestion, we need to cease the purchase of these seafoods, although curiously, both these fisheries are certified by the Marine Stewardship Council, although the Hoki fishery in particular, there was 2 objections made to that certification, one by Royal Forest and Bird and World Wildlife Fund New Zealand, on behalf of the impact on the seabed and seabird bycatch. And also serving otherwise wasted seafood. I think this one would be challenging as serving things such as the heads of a fish is probably likely to just lead to more food waste, as it's probably not something the students would want to eat. So a solution to the MS, the Marine Stewardship Council certifications, and to double check this with another guide, such as the Forest and Birds Best Fish Guide, which is New Zealand's only independent consumer guide to sustainable seafood, where it might be hard to see, but if you look closely, poke and orange robbie are in worse to eat or okay but with concerns categories, where some other fish such as Pūhau, salmon, tuna are in the good to eat category. So you can look at this and kind of double check this with the new MSC certifications. And this would also help to diversify the seafood on our menus. Treating staff fairly, moving good suggested actions are improving the impact of rota planning on staff, increasing lowest wage paid to the equivalent to living wage. So currently the lowest wage paid is just above minimum wage. Ensure staff physical and mental well-being, improve training and education of staff. So this could include sustainability, environmental management training, so such as waste reduction training and energy and water management training in the kitchen. Feed people well. So human health and planetary health are deeply connected. Food making suggested actions to design recipes to reach WHO guidelines around nutrition, sugar and salt, improve diet, sugar and fat intake, reduce the amount of highly processed ingredients used in recipes. So refined sugars, so the main sweetener used in our recipes. Challenges are also the sort of a trade-off between health of the food and food waste and whether the students will actually eat it. So it's more likely that you're going to have all of the fried potatoes eaten than the boiled potatoes. And same with dried battered fish. It's mostly not going to be eaten if it's poached, is what the chef said about. Also a recommendation is we could traffic light meals based on the Eat Lancet diet, which is a diet that optimizes like human and planetary health. And this would help enable us to limit the serving of like meals that are both bad for the planet and for humans. Support the community, suggested actions, encourage more staff volunteering, provide free or subsidized cookery education. This could be to students' use of lighting, improve dining accessibility and customer experience, and reducing noise pollution. Reducing your footprint. So to reduce our footprint, it is vital that we have a dietary shift away from high emission products such as meat, red meats, and work with suppliers to promote carbon removal practices in our supply chains, minimize energy and water usage in kitchens, reduce waste and promote new reuse into building refurbishment, reduce the evolution of facilities, using non-toxic, environmentally friendly cleaning products. Although there's a bit of a challenge to this one, is currently corrosive cleaning products are used. However, a lot of the, or some of the ovens, some of the equipment, they have to have a specific chemical that goes along with them to keep their warranty. And then in this graph, it shows the different dietary scenarios and the amount of carbon emissions produced and saved in different scenarios. So chicken and meats replaced by plant-based options saves the most and produces the least carbon, with the business as usual producing almost twice as much carbon emissions based on the 2023 food purchase data. Okay, so the university net carbon zero plan has discussed doing carbon emission traffic lights to inform diners and chefs on which meals and their environmental sustainability. So here's a option for that and how that could look. And this graph shows the money saved in different dietary scenarios. If chicken and meats were replaced by plant-based, we could save around 150,000 in money that would otherwise be spent on carbon credits if we are going to become net carbon zero by 2030. So waste no food. So there's a strong incentive in the halls to not waste food because it's their profit. So all the food that is wasted from operational and recreational cooking is just food that can't be eaten because of food safety standards, and that food waste is also diverted to a digester where it is turned into soil conditioner for the university's gardens. Although currently the majority of our food waste does go to landfill, so food makers actions are reducing food waste to landfill and having the majority of it go to either a digester or to be composted. Incorporating ingredients that otherwise go to waste and donating food, although donating food is tricky as it's taking the food away from the diners who are paying for the food and giving it to another business, because the leftover foods would be incorporated or like served the next day. So challenges with waste no food is infrastructure. So currently the commercial food waste cannot be taken from waste managers to be composted. So it just all goes straight to landfill. And contamination, so plate waste can't be digested or composted because of things like napkins and cutlery, and once even a phone was found in the food waste from the halls. Also, to incorporate ingredients that parts of the vegetables that wouldn't be used is difficult, because often the vegetables are just bought pre-prepared because they don't have enough time to cut up all the broccoli, things like that. And instead we're kind of relying on who's sourcing the vegetables to responsibly manage that. Oh, and here's also a poster of you could put up to try and convince people and say why they should avoid wasting their food. Reduce, reuse, recycle. So food makers suggested actions are setting specific reduction targets for individual waste streams, train staff in waste reduction in kitchens, source staff uniforms from recycled materials, make the majority of single-use items recyclable, biodegradable, or compostable, eliminate or reduce the amount of single-use items and paper use. So it is suggested that we don't look to make things biodegradable or compostable, because currently those plastics cannot be biodegraded or composted in Dunedin, and instead just go straight to landfill, so it's better to focus on recyclable. Challenges with reducing like plastic waste is the food safety standards. Plastic bags are really good, so it's a bit of a trade-off between more food waste or more plastic. Something in the halls is that they have a lot of single-use plastic gloves and cling film, which probably be reduced, for example, making sure that the single-use gloves are never used for like when it's big. It's good to be used when you're dealing with food, but not when you're washing dishes and things like that. We should have dishwashing gloves for that. Yeah, and then also there's no infrastructure to compost or biodegrade. So lastly, using our influence and communicating about Otago University's work towards sustainability would help reaffirm us as a leader in sustainability, and also encouraging other universities to also evaluate their own food systems as well. And it's also a part of each of the categories of food made good, and you get points for, and you increase your rating for communicating to the diners and to the wider community about your work. Any questions?
71% and across different bars. You got any feelings on have you taken what we say a conservative approach? We'll make it more than that, we'll make it less than that, get a harsh assessor, how sensitive is it, do you think?
Yeah, I'm not really sure, but I did email Food Made Good and like showed them the evidence I put in some of the questions. And there were some where they were like, there was one that they were like, no, that's not, that won't be good enough for that person. And there was one that like, yep, that's enough. So I kind of judged it on that.
Okay. So 71% would give us what rating?
I think it might be 3 stars.
3?
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like it's kind of a good thing, but also a bad thing, because I think there's a lot to work on, and it might encourage complacency a little bit.
That was my next question.
You said changing the diets in the halls would be a good idea to reduce waste. Have you talked to the people in the halls about that's feasible, like changing the diets and stuff?
Also, changing the diets is like for reducing like carbon emissions.
Yeah, but has he talked to them about like changing the rules?
Yeah, so it doesn't really sound like something they were very much like, we're going to feed the students what they want. So it sounds like for the halls to do what they want, they almost want the demand to come from the students. Yeah. There's also a lot of talk about how sustainability is just a part of the food system, and they also like to think about finance and I guess nutrition and like satisfaction and stuff. So yeah, that's a bit of a limitation, I guess.
Have you seen at all any correlation between, like, I know food intolerance and a lot more like, I don't know, celiac, gluten-free kind of diets? Have you seen any increase between like sustainability focused food solutions for a range of covering those diets? Like, I know all of our colleges kitchen now nut-free for peanut allergies. Like, could it be going down that route through the diet train?
Yeah.
I guess in the essence of like, it meets one of our biggest things. Maybe there's really good alternatives that are meat-free that also address a lot of like food intolerances that I know a lot of the colleges are saying a lot of now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess the issue with like getting rid of like a lot of the meats, which would be really good, but it's just like, what if the diners just leave the halls and go eat somewhere else, and then it just replacing the emissions? But ultimately, I think like reducing the meat serves, or just even like deceiving the diners a little bit into eating less meat, kind of saying like, this is a meat lasagna, like beef lasagna, but then like it's got like a lot of like lentils in it as well, instead of just beef.
Do you hear a lot of from the chefs, a lot of their thoughts around Mindful Monday?
Yeah, so this from the chefs, it sounded like there was a bit of like a negative attitude towards Mindful Monday. If people call it like mindless.
if we get 2 or 3 stars, what do you think the impact of the university would be
Well,
significantly?
yeah, I guess, sort of like advertising to, students like internationally as well and kind of encouraging like sustainability minded students or like making this university more attractive to them and then maybe, people like diners being aware that like it's a focus of the university and sort of think about their own actions and hopefully like learn sustainable practices from being at Pūhau so they can carry into planning and the rest of their lives.
I've been thinking about if we get that accreditation, it becomes more awkward for those who are resistant to the changes we want to see to stay resistant. They perhaps have to.
Yeah, like it's kind of like adds like a reward for being sustainable, like an incentive.
Same sort of way, like, do you think that if we did get like 2 or 3 stars, maybe like, there would become like this big sort of advertising part of it, that people would kind of be like, oh, well, that's just part of a title, and like diners would just kind of learn to expect a more like environmental new and this backlash, if it was like an advertised thing, or is it more about like just kind of being sneaky and sort of changing habits more sort of seamlessly?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both, because I think we do need to be a bit like sneaky about it, like at first at least, because I feel like there's a lot of like, especially like with people thinking that they need to like eat a whole steak to like get enough protein and that sort of thing, whereas like a whole steak is probably like the amount of protein that you need for an entire day. So I think people kind of freak out when they're like, no, where's my protein, where's my meat? But if you kind of like, you say that you're giving them the meat, but it's like not as much as necessarily they think, they probably won't realize, and they'll probably just be tricked into eating less protein, less meat, not less protein.